Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and today we are doing more ideas and opinions of Albert Einstein. We'll be doing 3 parts today. First part is called Address on Receiving Lord and Taylor Award. This was a broadcast that happened by radio. It was tape recorded on May the 4th, 1953. So it was much later than a lot of the other pieces we've been reading, which are in the 30s and 40s. I gladly accept this award as an expression of friendly sentiments. It gives me great pleasure, indeed, to see the stubbornness of an incorrigible nonconformist warmly acclaimed. To be sure, we are concerned here with nonconformism in a remote field of endeavor, and no senatorial committee has as yet felt impelled to tackle the important task of combating also in this field the danger which threatens the inner security of the uncritical or else intimidated citizen. As for the words of the warm praise addressed to me, I shall carefully refrain from disputing them. For who still believes that there is such a thing as genuine modesty? I should run the risk of being taken for just an old hypocrite. You will surely understand that I do not find the courage to brave this danger. Thus, all that remains is to assure you of my gratitude. Next piece is called Modern Inquisitional Methods. And it was a letter to William Fraunglass, a teacher in Brooklyn, New York, who had refused to testify before a congressional committee. And it was published on June the 12th, 1953 in the New York Times. Even though the letter is from May the 16th. Dear Mr. Fraunglass, thank you for your communication. By remote field, I referred to the theoretical foundations of physics. The problem with which the intellectuals of this country are confronted is very serious. The reactionary politicians have managed to instill suspicion of all intellectual efforts into the public by dangling before their eyes a danger from without having succeeded so far. They are now proceeding to suppress the freedom of teaching and to deprive of their positions all those who do not prove submissive, i.e., serve them. That ought the minority of intellectuals to do against this evil. Frankly, I can only see the revolutionary way of non-cooperation in the sense of Gandhi's. Every intellectual who is called before one of the committees ought to refuse to testify, i.e., he must be prepared for jail and economic ruin. In short, for the sacrifice of his personal welfare in the interest of cultural welfare of his country. However, this refusal to testify must not be based on the well-known subterfuge of invoking the Fifth Amendment against possible self-incrimination, but on the assertion that it is a shameful for a blameless citizen to submit to such an inquisition, and that this kind of inquisition violates the spirit of the Constitution. If enough people are ready to take this grave step, they will be successful. If not, then the intellectuals of this country deserve nothing better than the slavery which is intended for them. P.S. This letter need not be considered confidential. So yeah, Einstein is saying here essentially, we must speak out the truth. We must speak out the facts. Because you have to remember, in 1953, I think the Red Scare was still happening, if I remember correctly. And, yeah, there was not only a lot of pushback against entertainment in Hollywood, there's also a lot of pushback on the sciences. And it's also an interesting part there. He mentions using the non-compliance of Gandhi, which, if you've also been watching my parts on Martin Luther King Jr.'s writings and speeches, that's one thing he talks about continuously, is Gandhi's use of non-compliance. But anyway, let's get to the final part here, and it's named Human Rights. It's an address to the Chicago Decalogue Society in February the 20th, 1954. Ladies and gentlemen, you are assembled today to devote your attention to the problem of human rights. You have decided to offer me an award on this occasion. When I learned about it, I was somewhat depressed by your decision. For in how unfortunate a state must a community find itself if it cannot produce a more suitable candidate upon whom to confer such a distinction. In a long life, I have devoted all my faculties to teach a somewhat deeper insight into the structure of physical reality. Never have I made my systemic effort to ameliorate the lot of men, to fight injustice and suppression, and to improve the traditional forms of human relations. The only thing I did was this. In long intervals, I have expressed an opinion on public issues whenever they appeared to me so bad and unfortunate that silence would have made me feel guilty of complicity. The existence and validity of human rights are not written in the stars. The ideas concerning the conduct of men toward each other and the desirable structure of the community have been conceived and taught by enlightened individuals in the course of history. Those ideas and convictions which resulted from historical experience, from the craving for beauty and harmony, have been readily accepted in theory by man, and at all times have been trampled upon by the same people under the pressure of their animal instincts. A large part of history is therefore replete with the struggle for those human rights, an eternal struggle in which a final victory can never be won. But to tire in that struggle would mean to ruin of that society. In talking about human rights today, we were referring to primarily to the following demands: protection of the individual against arbitrary infringement by other individuals or by the government, the right to work and to adequate earnings from work, freedom of discussion and teaching, adequate participation of the individual in the formation of his government. These human rights are nowadays recognized theoretically, although by abundant use of formulaic legal maneuvers, they are being violated to a much greater extent than ever a generation ago. There is, however, one other human right which is infrequently mentioned, but which seems to be destined to become very important. This is the right or the duty of the individual to sustain from cooperation in activities which he considers wrong or pernicious. The first place in this respect must be given to the refusal of military service. I have known instances where individuals of unusual moral strength and integrity have, for what reason, come into conflict with the organs of the state. The Nuremberg trial of the German war criminals was tacitly based on the recognition of the principle. Criminal actions cannot be excused if committed on government orders. Conscience supersedes the authority of law of the state. The struggle of our own days is being waged primarily for the freedom of political conviction and discussion, as well as for the freedom of research and teaching. The fear of communism has led to practices which have become incomprehensible to the rest of the civilized mankind and expose our country to ridicule. How long shall we tolerate that politicians, hungry for power, try to gain political advantages in such a way? Sometimes it seems that people have lost their sense of humor to such a degree that the French saying ridicule kills has lost its validity. So, yeah, he kind of feels that he's unworthy of the award because all he feels that he really did is speak out because he felt that it was just necessary as a human to speak out for what was happening, what was going on. And then he goes on to list certain types of human rights everyone must have, and how you must speak out or not cooperate if you feel something is wrong. And he even says you must push back against government orders if they are not morally right. Saying human rights supersedes orders by the government, by the law of that state. And we see this. He mentions the Nuremberg trials. They basically say it doesn't matter if you were just following orders. these orders were immoral. You should have known this. You should have felt this, that doing such things was wrong. But, yeah. But as always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tries to tell you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. But that will be it for now. I'll see you all in the next episode. Until then, later.